If your fashion wish list lives rent-free in your brain, you need to be on Poshmark. With Poshmark, you're shopping millions of listings from thousands of closets, each curated by someone with their own style. Vintage finds, designer pieces, and everyday staples all in one place. Search for your favorites or let the discovery come to you. Poshmark makes it easy to find what you actually want to wear at prices that feel like a quiet win. Download the Poshmark app today and use code PODCAST10 when you sign up to get $10 off your first purchase.
Hey listeners, this is Peter, and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In the 19th century, the two greatest empires on Earth played a game. The board was Central Asia, the vast, mountainous, barely mapped expanse between the Russian Empire to the north and the British India to the south. The pieces were explorers, spies, diplomats, and armies. The prize was India, the jewel of the British Empire, the subcontinent that one British statesman called the most important possession in the world. And the fear that drove British strategy for nearly a century, was Russia. Not Russia as it existed in the 1820s, 1,000 miles from the Khyber Pass. Russia as it was moving, steadily, relentlessly, absorbing Khanate after Khanate, pushing south across the steppe toward the mountain ranges that separated the Russian advance from the plains of northern India. The British called it the Great Game. The Russians called it the Tournament of Shadows. Two empires, one continent, and between them, the kingdoms of peoples of Central Asia, Afghanistan, Persia, the Khanates of Bukhara and Khiva and Kokand, who had very little to say in the matter. Our history brief today is an excerpt from this Friday's Conversation Series episode and a conversation with Alex Wright about his latest book, The Empire of Ink. Just a reminder that the full video of the interview is already available to our Patreon subscribers and will be released on our YouTube channel this Friday, as well as on all podcast platforms. A quick word from our sponsors.
You know that feeling. Too many updates, too many meetings, too many things falling through the cracks. Monday.com was built for that gap. The AI work platform designed from the ground up for people and agents to work side by side and deliver more together. Drafting the brief, flagging risks, running a competitive scan, your agent can do it all. And the best part, anyone can build one. Even you. Try it. Create your first Monday agent today at Monday.com.
This day in history. On August 12, 1851, Isaac Singer received a patent for his improved sewing machine, helping revolutionize the garment industry and bringing mass-produced clothing within reach of millions. On August 12, 1981, IBM introduced its first personal computer, the IBM PC. The machine helped establish the modern personal computing industry and forever changed how people work, learn, and communicate. Story of the day. The phrase is usually credited to a British intelligence officer named Arthur Connolly, who used it in a letter in 1840. Kipling immortalized it in his 1901 novel Kim, the story of an Irish orphan boy trained as a British spy in India, moving through the bazaars and mountain passes of the northwest frontier, playing the game against Russian agents. But the reality behind the romance was older than Connolly's phrase and darker than Kipling's adventure. It began in earnest in the 1820s when a young British officer named Alexander Burns traveled through Afghanistan and Central Asia, mapping routes, assessing defenses, gathering intelligence, and sending reports back to Calcutta that outlined, with increasing alarm, the speed of Russian expansion southward. Russia had been moving for decades. Each advance created new borders that needed to be defended, which required further advances to secure those borders, which in turn created new vulnerabilities that required further advances still. By the 1830s, Russia had absorbed enough of Central Asia that the distance between the Russian frontier and British India had shrunk from thousands of miles to just hundreds. The British watched and calculated and grew steadily more alarmed. The Great Game was fought at two levels simultaneously. At the diplomatic level, it was a contest of spheres of influence, treaty negotiations, boundary commissions, the formal apparatus of imperial rivalry managed through ambassadors and foreign ministers. At the ground level, it was something considerably more dangerous. Individual agents, British officers traveling in disguise, Indian survey teams mapping unmapped territories, Russian Cossack officers probing the approaches to the Hindu Kush, moved through some of the most inhospitable terrain on Earth, gathering intelligence, cultivating local rulers, and occasionally dying for it. Alexander Burns, the officer who had warned Calcutta about Russian expansion, was killed by a mob in 1841 during the catastrophic First Anglo Afghan War. That war, Britain's first attempt to install a friendly government in Kabul as a buffer against Russian influence, ended in one of the most complete military disasters in British imperial history. An entire army of 16,000 soldiers and camp followers retreating from Kabul through the Afghan winter was destroyed. One man reached the British garrison alive. Just one. The Afghans had demonstrated something that the Great Games players would need to learn again and again. The people between the empires were not simply pieces on a board. They had their own interests, their own capacities, and their own willingness to resist. The closest the Great Game came to direct war between Britain and Russia came in March of 1885. Russian forces advancing into Central Asia clashed with Afghan troops at a place called Panjeta, a small oasis near what is now the border between Afghanistan and Turkmenistan. The Russians won the engagement and seized the territory. Britain was furious. Parliament voted war credits. The fleet was put on alert. For several weeks in the spring of 1885, the two greatest empires on earth appeared to be on the brink of open war over a small oasis most of their citizens could not have located on a map. Then, gradually, the crisis eased. Afghanistan accepted Russian possession of the oasis in exchange for other territorial concessions. Britain accepted the outcome. The Great Game continued. But the incident had revealed something important. Neither empire actually wanted a direct war with the other. The costs would be catastrophic for both. The game was a substitute for war, a way of pursuing the same objectives through espionage, diplomacy, and proxy conflicts rather than direct confrontation. It was, in its way, the first great example of what the 20th century would call a superpower rivalry. The Great Game ended, formally, in 1907 with the Anglo Russian Convention. Britain and Russia, exhausted by the costs of the game and alarmed by the rising power of Germany, divided Central Asia into spheres of influence. Persia was split into a Russian zone in the north, a British zone in the south, and a neutral zone between them. Afghanistan was recognized as a British sphere of influence. Tibet went to Britain. The peoples of these territories were consulted on none of it. The convention did not end the rivalry, it simply managed it, transforming the Great Game from a covert shadow war into a more formal partition of the region between the two powers. The legacy of the Great Game is not difficult to find. The borders drawn by the Anglo Russian boundary commissions of the late 19th century, lines that were run through mountain ranges and river valleys by European officers who had never met the people they were dividing, are substantially the borders of modern Central Asia. Afghanistan's boundaries were determined largely by where the British and Russian empires agreed to stop. The Durand Line, the border between Afghanistan and what is now Pakistan, drawn by the British in 1893, has been the source of conflict and instability ever since. And the great geopolitical question that animated the Great Game, who controls the approach to South Asia, who dominates the heartland of the Eurasian continent, has not disappeared. It has simply acquired new players. The United States spent 20 years in Afghanistan before withdrawing in 2021 from a country where British armies had fought in 1839, 1878, and 1919. The Tournament of Shadows, as the Russians called it, has never really ended. The board is the same. The pieces have simply changed. The game goes on. The History Brief. The following is an excerpt from this Friday's Conversation Series episode and a conversation with Alex Wright about his latest book, The Empire of Ink: The Printers, Rogues, and Radicals Who Invented the American Newspaper. Again, just a reminder that the full video of this interview is already available to our Patreon subscribers and will be released on our YouTube channel this Friday, as well as on all podcast platforms.
Unlike maybe our European forebears who have these ancient civilizations with all their founding mythologies and traditions and customs, like the US was kind of invented from scratch. And I think a big part of the appeal of newspapers was the sense of participation, in the sort of civic culture, and a sense of in a sense, you could say Americans kind of wrote themselves into existence, right? I mean, we were the first country founded on a set of documents, and then we sort of continued to figure out who we were in the pages of the newspapers that everyone sort of
you do mention that. Yeah, you do mention that in the book. This idea of like creating this shared culture, because the North, South, West, they're all so different. And you kind of get to know what North is like if you live in the South through newspapers, right?
Yep,
and
that's
you
right.
kind of get to know what it means to be an American somewhere else, and you start kind of drawing on those similarities as much as differences, as well as differences.
That's right.
Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you are enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, where we have different videos and series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.
Honestly,
no one wants to think about HIV, but there are things that everyone can do to help prevent it. Things like PrEP. PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis, and it means routinely taking prescription medicine before you're exposed to HIV to help reduce your chances of getting it. PrEP can be about 99% effective when taken as prescribed. It doesn't protect against other STIs though, so be sure to use condoms and other healthy sex practices. Ask a healthcare provider about all your prevention options, and visit findoutaboutprep.com to learn more. Sponsored by Gilead.